If you're a gearhead, you know that outdoor equipment has evolved greatly over the years. There are ultralight backpacks that weigh virtually nothing, water bottles that keep your drink cold or hot for days, and the most waterproof raincoats you've worn. Lise Wortley chooses not to use any of it. No nylon, no Gore-Tex, no crampons. Instead, Lise's expeditions retrace the footsteps of historical women explorers whose achievements have been overlooked.
I was reading the book and there's this part in it where she sleeps in her yak wool coat on a mountain pass in the snow. And I was thinking, how do you do that if you don't have a modern day puff jacket or a sleeping bag to keep you from freezing to death? And that's what kind of started it. And I would think, well, I'm never going to understand what she went through or how she actually did this and the challenges she faced if I was in modern day clothing. I'm going to have to wear what she wore.
Before each journey, Lise absorbs all the information she can find about these women. She reads their journals and researches their routes, equipment they used, and clothes they wore. Then she sources the most authentic, historically accurate pieces to wear on the trail, from hobnail boots to vintage underwear. Replicating the clothing and equipment from more than 100 years ago allows Lise to experience the adventure through the eyes of these remarkable women and raise awareness about their accomplishments. I'm Shelby Stanger, and this is Wild Ideas Worth Living, an REI Co-op Studios production presented by Capital One and the REI Co-op MasterCard. Lise Wortley, welcome to Wild Ideas Worth Living. You have one of the most exciting wild ideas I've heard in a very long time. So I found you on Instagram and I was like, who is this girl? You recreate famous adventures by historical women in the clothes they would have worn at the time, in the hundreds of years ago or in the 1800s. You just seem like a badass. How do you introduce yourself and your wild idea to people who just haven't heard of you before?
I love that intro. Thank you. I don't know. Usually I just say I'm an accidental adventurer, but yours is a lot better than that.
Well, I want to hear how you became an accidental adventurer. So when you grew up and you're in England right now, did you grow up adventurous? Were you an outdoorsy kid?
Yeah, I was really outdoorsy, actually. I was born in London, but then my parents moved out when I was about 3 into literally the middle of nowhere. It couldn't have been more different. And I was this wild child. And I just used to run around the garden kind of feral little creature. And it was amazing. I had amazing childhood. And then I've actually been thinking about this a lot recently. I definitely sort of lost that connection when I was a teenager and moved to the city. So yeah, I grew up in the outdoors and then I really lost it for a bit. But when I was about 27, I sort of got back into walking and back into, just being in the outdoors and understanding how good it was for my mental health. So
I want to dive into this because I too had a little bit of a mental awakening, let's say, at around 27 to 29. It's a pretty pivotal age for a young woman, and decided that I wanted to quit my job and go into nature and write about adventure. So at 27, you must have had some sort of epiphany that was I want to go dress up like people from the 1800s and recreate their adventures. That's a really wild, specific idea. How did it come to you?
So it actually started a lot earlier than that. So when I was sort of in my early teens, so 15, 16, I read a book by a woman adventurer called Alexandra David Neal, and I could go on about her forever.
Tell me about her really quickly.
She was this really amazing woman. So she was French, and so 1910, she set off on this 14-year journey through Asia, from Europe, which women just didn't do things like that at the time. She left her husband behind, went off on this journey. She was the first Western woman to meet the Dalai Lama. She learnt Tibetan. She lived in a cave for 2 years, just meditating. And yeah, she was just this incredible woman, and I'd never heard of her. And I was reading this book, why was I not taught about her at school? Who is this incredible woman? She's so inspiring. And she kind of slept on freezing mountain passes and walked for months on end through the mountains. And she was just incredible. So I read this book when I was 16, and I kind of had this idea that I would follow in her footsteps, because everyone I asked was like, I've never heard of her. I don't know who she is. And I was like, but she's amazing. Look, she did all this stuff. It's so inspiring and brave to do all that back then. And then I think life, like I said, just sort of got in the way. I moved to the city. I started having a really difficult time with my mental health. I was having really bad panic attacks, like constantly, had to stop going to work for a few months at one point. And then eventually, after all that, I kind of went back to this book when I started feeling a bit better and reread it.
In her 20s, Lise struggled with severe panic attacks and anxiety, but she found that being in nature was helpful for her mental health. When she was 27, she decided to finally pursue her dream of following in Alexandra David Neal's footsteps. Lise set her sights on recreating Alexandra's trek as closely as possible, from Lochin, India, to the base camp of a nearby mountain. Though she hired a local guide and a camerawoman to accompany her, Lise was determined that everything else would be historically accurate. So your first big idea was to go trace Alexandra David Neal's journey into India. But did you also, I know a big part of your adventures is you go back and you dress like the women and what they would have worn during this time. And she was 1910, you said?
Yeah, that's when she started. So yeah, the other wild idea was doing it in what she had at the time.
How did you get this idea? Because no one does this. It's like, did you take acting school? Were you interested in costume?
No, people always say, are you kind of pretending to be the person? I'm like, no, I'm not. What happened was I was reading the book and there's this part in it where she sleeps in her yak wool coat on a mountain pass in the snow all night long. And I was thinking, how do you do that if you don't have a, puffer jacket, a modern day puffer jacket or a sleeping bag to like keep you from freezing to death? And that's what kind of started it. And I would think, well, I'm never going to understand what she went through or how she actually did this and the challenges she faced if I was in modern day clothing. Like, I'm going to have to wear what she wore. And the other thing that I noticed was because they were battling to be taken seriously as the male kind of adventurers at the time, they would never really write about how they truly felt, like if they were scared or if they were cold or if they just didn't want to be there anymore. So I thought actually that would be a really good way to understand a bit more about how they maybe really would have felt if I was in the old stuff. So that's how it started.
What was this first trip like? Like, take me back. What year was this?
2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're 27 years old or 28 years old probably by this time. And you go and what do you wear? How do you get the clothes? And what's it like?
Yeah, so finding the clothes it's a lot of research. So I kind of see what they mention they have in the book and then see if I can get the actual stuff from the time, like on sort of vintage websites, things like that. If I can't find the actual things, then I'll try and get them made or something like that. So it's just a lot of research, finding the stuff. Like a yak wool coat, I had to get a contact that I had in India to pick that up because it was kind of like a traditional one. So yeah, it's a lot of like muddling all things together. And then I really wanted to go all the way. So obviously she would never talk about underwear in the book, but it's just finding out what underwear looked like in 1910. Like, what did they have? What was it like? That kind of thing. So I made sure everything. Have? So like rocket bras and things like that.
What's a rocket
corsets.
Bra?
Well, it's like a pointy bra.
Ow.
And then a lot of like all-in-one things. So
what do you mean all-in-one things?
I don't know how you describe
like a jumper?
Them. Yeah.
Like a bodysuit?
Like shorts and a like blouse, but all together. I think they call them combinations, actually. It's just
like a jumper, like a romper, but an uncomfortable romper.
I mean, they're not that uncomfortable.
Oh, okay.
And I'm quite lucky in the sense that a lot of women who went to the mountains, if they had to wear corsets, they were like, well, I'm not wearing that up the mountain. So they just take them off because a corset up a mountain's not good. But yeah, so it's researching all this stuff that they would have had that they don't mention and then just piecing it all together. And then the shoes, things like that, working out what they would have had. So hobnail boots mainly.
What? Hobnail boots?
Yeah, so they're
I'm so sorry, I did not know that.
leather boots. And then they've got nails in the bottom for grip. So that's what they all wore in like the 18 and early 1900s, just leather boots with metal nails in the bottom.
And you wore those?
Yeah, I wore those. Yeah.
And how many miles did you walk in these shoes?
I can't remember how far we went on that trip. That was a long way. I think it was like
hours?
Like
Kilometers?
8 or 9 a day. Yeah.
For how many days?
That was a month, that trip. That's
You
quite a long one.
Sorry if you're listening to this, my mouth is wide open. So you walked in like these boots with nails in them that were uncomfortable, this itchy underwear and like whatever it was, and
so itchy.
A yak coat.
So itchy.
It sounds awful.
Yeah.
And you did 9 hours a day.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. And I go a bit slow as well because of the shoes. So it's surprising, it's not comfortable and they're not like normal shoes, but you would be surprised sort of how they hold up in situations like that.
Do you have any stories from that trip that really stand out? Like a time that just there's so much awe, or you were so scared, or it all fell into place?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there were so many. So the aim was to get to Mount Kanchenjunga base camp. So that's the third highest peak in the world. And it's in this northern bit of Sikkim. It's very remote. It's quite hard to get there because you need so many visas. So there's not many tourists. There's hardly anyone around. But it's this really sacred mountain. And Django, who was our guide, was of the Lepcha community descent. So they're the indigenous people that sort of lived in this part of India. And they see the mountain as this guardian deity, and it's very important to them. So we kind of got to the top after a lot of trouble. So like altitude sickness, like all this stuff had sort of happened. And we got there and we were just at this moment of the trip where it was just absolutely incredible to be staring at this mountain that's like the third highest in the world, so special and like so spiritual. And Django actually changed into sort of her traditional dress and did a prayer for her late father. And it was just this moment I'll never forget. It was amazing.
So on this trip, you basically walked 9 hours a day for about a month at over 20,000 feet?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the highest we went. Well, I'm a bit British, so we say meters, but 5,500 meters. I don't know how many feet that is.
Okay, yeah. So you're basically your base camp is 5,500 meters, which is about 18,000 plus feet.
Yeah, didn't feel good. Headaches, feeling really sick. And you're trying to walk, but you have absolutely no energy. And then I'm in all the old itchy stuff on top of that. There's like no comfort.
Were you worried about slipping?
Yeah. So I've actually got a lot more used to these boots. And you can trust them. And interestingly, they're really bad on man-made materials. But when they're on rock or like soil or things like that, they're actually a lot better. So you kind of learn to trust them. But yeah, at first you're kind of moving like a penguin, like really slowly and just trying really hard not to twist an ankle.
In addition to dressing like Alexandra on the trek, Lise and her group ate like her too. This meant stopping at the homes of people they met along the way, eating meals like curries and breads. These moments of connection were a welcome break from the challenges they faced on their trek, like extremely low temperatures and altitude sickness. Over the course of a month, the group hiked roughly 108 miles across snowy, rocky landscapes to reach their destination. After that first trip, how did you change?
Well, people always ask me that. And actually, I remember coming back from that trip and I thought, well, I've done that now. I'm going to feel better. I'm going to be really brave and I'm not going to be anxious. And it was the complete opposite. I felt like a tiny little wreck. Like it was awful. And I think because I'd built up so much and I thought, well, if I can go and do that, then why would I panic over things anymore? And it was totally the opposite. And actually over all this time I've just learned that it's not a quick fix and potentially it's something that I'll live with forever. But it was still it had been years of feeling bad, and I think I just thought this would change me and make me really confident, and it didn't. But now I look back and I'm like, actually everything I've done has definitely done that. It's just taken time to build up. And now I'm very confident and I can like stand on a stage and talk to lots of people and things like that. But I would not have been able to do that after that first trip. So it was interesting coming back, because actually when I was on the trip and I was in the wild and I was leading this group of people, I was okay and I was quite confident. But then it was when I got back home, I just went into a little shell again. So yeah, interestingly, it didn't do what I kind of hoped it would. But then I started just sort of researching, because it was a way to make myself feel better. And I just really enjoyed these stories, and it kind of gave me a lot of hope, I guess, that these women had been doing these things.
When Lise returned from India, she started keeping a spreadsheet of women whose paths she could retrace. Her list includes more than 100 riders, mountaineers, and even a pirate queen from the 1800s. These women traveled all over the world, but Lise decided that for her next trip, she wanted to stay closer to home. I've got great news if you're looking to get outside and go after a wild adventure this summer. The REI Co-op MasterCard turns everyday purchases into limitless possibilities by offering rewards and benefits that support your love of the outdoors. This card is just for REI Co-op members, taking your membership even further by offering card rewards on purchases at REI and everywhere else. Plus, you can redeem your card rewards as you earn them, so you can grab gear for your upcoming adventure, stock up on snacks to keep you fueled, and keep more cash in your pocket. Head over to rei.com/MasterCard-podcast to see if you're pre-approved today. That's rei.com/MasterCard-podcast. Terms apply. Hey guys, there's a new water bottle company called Ocean Bottle. If you care about our oceans and making a positive impact, check them out. Ocean bottles are sleek, durable, dishwasher safe, and most importantly, they're on a mission to stop 7 billion plastic bottles from polluting our seas. Every sale of one of their award-winning reusable thermoses or water bottles funds the collection of 1,000 single-use plastic bottles before they reach the ocean. As an avid surfer, the water is really important to me. That's why I love this company's mission to keep plastics out of the ocean. Their best-selling Ocean Bottle Original comes in various sizes, including the popular 34 fluid ounces. It features a dual opening lid for easy cleaning, a 100% leak-proof seal, and double wall insulation to keep your beverage icy cold for up to 48 hours. Now you can join their mission by choosing gear that does more. Find your Ocean Bottle at rei.com and select REI stores. That's rei.com, or head into your local REI today. Lise Wortley follows the paths of historical women explorers whose accomplishments have been largely forgotten. She calls this project Woman with Altitude. Lise did her first trek in 2017. It followed the route of an explorer named Alexander David Neal, who hiked through Central Asia in the early 20th century. For her next adventure, she took inspiration from the writer Nan Shepherd. After that first trip, how soon did you do the next one?
So there was Nan Shepherd's book that I read called The Living Mountain, and it's actually got quite famous in the UK now, but when she originally wrote it in the 1940s, no one would publish it, so she chucked it in a drawer for 30 years, and it's now kind of celebrated as the most incredible book ever written on British landscape and nature. And she just lived in the Cairngorms, which is a big mountain range in Scotland, but she just walked across every part of it, basically, and then wrote about it. But she wrote it in this really sort of beautiful, philosophical way. And it was different to the other books at the time because it wasn't about getting to the top of the mountain. It was about experiencing the whole of the mountain and its ecosystem rather than, just rushing to the top and trying to conquer it. So it was this, so obviously it wasn't published at the time, but now it's just, yeah, really celebrated. So that was the second trip.
What were you wearing? What was a scary moment? And what was a highlight?
Yeah, so that was 1940s, she wrote that. So I was sort of head to toe dressed in tweed with my big boots again. And yeah, just wandered around. And I very naively thought that it was June, so the weather would be lovely. And I got there, and obviously it's Scotland, the high mountains. It was just sideways rain. So I just spent about 5 days cowering behind a rock in my really old 1940s tent, thinking, what am I doing? Why am I here? But actually, doing those things, you really kind of understand a place more. And that's when I started to really feel this connection with nature through the clothing. This was afterwards. This wasn't while I was there, like soaking wet behind the rock.
So your 1940s tent did not hold up?
Oh, no.
How do you find the 1940s tent?
So interestingly, 1940s and 30s and to today, you can find things quite easily because people are quite into like wartime, like 1940s, 1950s. There's a lot of stuff that's been kept, whereas before then you do really struggle. So actually this one was quite interesting because I found all this stuff from the 1940s. It was actually from the time. So I just sort of bought them off people that collect it, really.
And you just find them on like eBay or Facebook Marketplace? Or
eBay, and there's like specialist websites and things like that where you can get stuff from certain eras. There's like a big community of people that love the old stuff, especially like old school underwear. Now this sounds weird, but one of the women who makes this underwear, she makes replicas of Edwardian stuff. She has like an 8-month waiting list. You have to wait for this stuff. Like, it's really popular. I never knew that before.
I imagine people do photo shoots in this underwear. So
it's so funny.
It doesn't sound that surprising to me. But I'm guessing they're not going and recreating expeditions in this underwear.
No, they just like the clothes.
Anyway, what's some of the craziest gear you've had to carry?
Yeah, the wooden backpack was probably... This was my first trip, and I did mention earlier it was quite haphazard the way I organised it. So I didn't realise at the time when I had my budget that actually vintage rucksacks from 1910, like the frame that you could still buy, they were like £3,000, £4,000. So I just kind of tried to build my own basically, but I ended up using an old chair that I found. So I kind of rebuilt it, but with the chair, and it still looked a little bit like a chair, but it was made of the same material and looked pretty similar to the ones that I was looking at online. So yeah, it was a big kind of wooden thing with a big basket. But yeah, essentially backpacks used to be wooden.
Lise has gone to extraordinary lengths for historical authenticity. In addition to building her own wooden backpack and scouring the internet for 19th century style underwear, Lise has had to source some hard-to-find items. When finding the item is impossible, making a replica is the next best option. In fact, Lise's mom made her a wool dress and bonnet for her most recent project, a climb up Mont Blanc in Europe. Tell me a little bit about Mont Blanc, because I was in Switzerland a couple of years ago and I've seen those mountains and they're stunning. Tell me who this woman is and what year she did it.
So she's called Henriette de Angeville. My French accent's awful. But she did it in 1838. And there had been a woman that went up 30 years before, but she was carried to the summit. So Henriette wanted to be the first woman to walk up herself.
What was it like to climb Mont Blanc in these, what do you call the boots again?
The hobnail boots.
Hobnail boots.
It was interesting because a lot of my trips have been quite remote and I've been on my own a lot, or the group I've been with, it's kind of just been us. And I totally didn't realise how busy Chamonix is. And Mont Blanc is so busy. There were people everywhere. And I think one big part of it was actually stepping out in this clothing and knowing that everyone's going to be staring and everyone's going to be wondering what you're doing. And that I actually found harder than the idea that I had to climb up to the top of Mont Blanc and sort of...
Yeah, it'd be like going to Yosemite dressing like John Muir, but like,
yeah,
you're not wearing jeans or Yeah,
and I mean, this outfit was
what were you
quite
wearing?
something. It wasn't like the others. This one was, I mean, she made it herself. It was from 1838. It was a huge woolen dress that she had with a bonnet, a massive bonnet of the same material, so it matched. And then underneath, because back then women weren't supposed to wear trousers, so it was a time where if a woman wore trousers out in public, she'd get harassed and shouted at. So they would wear them underneath the dress. So it makes it kind of balloon even more. So these big woolen trousers, big woolen dress, and then, yeah, the hobnail boots, a huge bonnet, and a big kind of shawl. And people would kind of just stare, and then I'd be like, hello. And then they'd sort of smile, and then I'd explain the project. But yeah, I just didn't realize kind of how many people would be there, I guess. So that was the first kind of challenge, was overcoming that. And that point where you're so tired, you've been walking all day, and then someone else, and they're just being friendly, asking what you're doing, but all you want to do is just sit down and have a sip of water.
Yeah, they probably thought you were in like a religious cult, or like they weren't sure.
Yeah, probably.
That's what I would have thought.
Yeah.
So I'm just being honest.
And it's an unusual outfit, that one, because there weren't outdoor clothing for women back then. Like, she didn't have anything to base it on. So she literally just made it herself, which is why it was quite unusual.
And so you did it in these clothes?
Well, we got to the second hut because a storm came, which is why we're going to try again this year in like 4 months.
This summer, you're going to go to Mont Blanc and try it again.
Yes. Yeah. So basically, we took a risk and went in September last year because I wanted to summit on the same day that she did. So yeah, we tried to do it in September and summit on the same day, September the 4th. But yeah, it's really stormy at that time of year, and it was still so hot, so there's a lot of rockfall. So we had a lot of issues when we first got there. We couldn't go up because there was so much rockfall, because now it's warmer, the permafrost is starting to melt. So that's this really ancient layer of ice that holds a lot of the rocks in place is starting to melt. So these huge rocks fall, and it just makes it so dangerous. So we had a few days where we couldn't go because of that. And then we got a little window, but then a storm came and we were halfway up. So, you have to turn around, and because I'm in the old stuff, I take even longer. So there was no way that I was going to get up and down in time. And it's still a really dangerous mountain. I think 4 people actually died the day after we came down. So yeah, you still have to be really, really careful. So yeah, we'll see.
Do you take some modern safety equipment just in case?
Yeah, so one of my rules for Mont Blanc was that I had to. So I think they had a lot of people trying to climb it for charity and doing it in sort of costumes and things like that. So they brought this rule in where you weren't allowed to climb it in anything like that. So I spent a long time trying to explain to them how this was kind of different. And eventually I was allowed to do it, but as long as I took modern stuff with me in case. So actually everything that was in my backpack was just spare modern stuff, which made it even heavier. So Henriette was famous for taking all this stuff with her. Well, she had 6 porters, so they took like 26 roast chickens, 18 bottles of wine, like all this stuff. And people were like, are you going to take that? I was like, no, I've got a backpack full of like hiking boots. I can't take all that as well. But yeah.
While today's equipment is certainly safer, the antique garb helps Lise connect to the women she's emulating. Plus, she's gained a lot from leaving behind modern technology. Over the years, she's learned so much about the women who inspire her trips and about herself. Lise's anxiety used to make her scared to be alone in the wilderness, but now she finds a sense of peace in taking a slower approach. She's adopted Nan Shepherd's philosophy of being present in nature rather than trying to conquer it. Do you have a favorite expedition you've done?
Ooh, that's a hard question. I actually always go back to that Nan Shepherd one because it taught me so much. One thing she says in the book is how walking in the mountains sort of taught her to just be. And that's kind of how I felt after that. I think because I don't have modern stuff and I didn't really have anything to do but just stare around. So it really taught me to just really slow down and just kind of sit. And that's fine to not be doing something. So it taught me a lot, actually, that one.
You've been doing this now for 7 years. How has this project changed you?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's definitely changed me in a lot of ways. And it's only now, I think, where I feel more like myself and I feel more like, what if I hadn't started this? Like, what sort of person would I be? And would I have ever gotten over that anxiety? And would I still be in that awful space I was in? So I feel very grateful that I've got this and it's given me a purpose. And I'm definitely a totally different person. So yeah, it's just totally changed my life, I guess. Sounds a bit cheesy, but...
Do you have anything else like on the horizon after that you're eyeing?
I mean, there's so many. Yeah. It's actually the 130th anniversary this year of the first woman who cycled around the world, called Annie Londonderry. And she started in America. And yeah, obviously a bike with no gears. She was just on it in her corset, her dress, and just took one little suitcase with her that she put on the handlebars. And off she went. So I'd love to do something to kind of commemorate her this year, but I don't know. I'll have to think about it after Mont Blanc. I can't think about two at once. It's too much.
I love that Lise is raising awareness about the incredible women adventures we may have never known about before. Lise is currently on Mont Blanc, and I can't wait to hear about her second attempt. You can get updates on her Instagram at woman_with_altitude. That's woman with altitude. You can also learn more about her past treks on womanwithaltitude.com. Wild Ideas Worth Living is part of the REI Podcast Network. It's hosted by me, Shelby Stanger, produced by Annie Fassler, Sylvia Thomas, and Sam Piers-Nitzberg of Puddle Creative. Our senior producers are Jenny Barber and Hannah Boyd. Our executive producers are Paolo Motola and Joe Crosby. As always, we love it when you follow the show, take time to rate it, and write a review wherever you listen. And remember, some of the best adventures happen when you follow your wildest ideas.